The bright lights of the America's Got Talent stage shimmered like a dream. The audience was buzzing with excitement, unaware that something extraordinary was about to happen. The curtain parted slowly, and a small boy, around 12 years old, stepped onto the stage. His nervous smile and wide brown eyes showed a mixture of fear and hope. Walking beside him, holding onto his arm gently, was a little monkey wearing a tiny blue vest that read, "My best friend." The crowd let out a wave of soft laughter and surprise. This wasn't something they saw every day, a boy and a monkey walking hand in hand onto one of the biggest stages in the world. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious, while Sofia Vergara and Heidi Klum exchanged amused looks. "Well," Simon said, smiling slightly, "this is different." The audience laughed again. The boy swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he brought the microphone closer. Hello, sir. My name is Mateo," he said shyly, glancing at his companion. "And this is Coco." The monkey tilted its head playfully, raising a small paw as if waving to the judges. The crowd melted instantly. Even Howie Mandel couldn't hide his grin. "That monkey just waved at me," he said, laughing, and the audience joined in with applause. Simon softened his tone, lowering his voice. "Mateo, how old are you?" "I'm 12, the boy replied. "I come from the Philippines." "And Coco?" Simon asked, with a small smile. Mateo looked at his monkey, his eyes glistening slightly. "Coco's not just my pet. He's my best friend. He saved my life." The words hung in the air for a moment. The crowd grew quiet. Simon's expression changed from amused to intrigued. "He saved your life?" he asked gently. Mateo nodded. "Yes, sir. There was a flood in my village. I fell into the water, and Coco pulled me out. He held on until people came. Since then, I promised him I'd never leave him behind." The room went silent, all eyes on the small boy who spoke with such raw truth. The camera zoomed in on his trembling hands holding the microphone, and Coco's tiny fingers gripping his sleeve for comfort. Simon leaned back, visibly moved. "That's one of the most beautiful things I've heard," he said softly. "You and Coco have already won our hearts." The audience broke into applause, standing to cheer for them. Mateo's shoulders relaxed a little, and he looked down at Coco, who chattered softly, almost as if encouraging him. Simon smiled warmly and said, "All right, Mateo and Coco, let's see what you've got." Mateo took a deep breath, his small chest rising and falling as the stage lights dimmed slightly. The music technician gave a thumbs up from the side. Coco climbed onto his shoulder, wrapping an arm around Mateo's neck. For a moment, they both looked at the judges, at the thousands of eyes watching them, and then at each other. It wasn't just a performance about to begin, it was the start of a moment that would touch millions. The lights on the AGT stage dimmed, and the big screen behind Mateo flickered to life. The audience leaned forward, curious to see what story this quiet Filipino boy and his little monkey had to tell. Soft piano music began to play, and the words, "Mateo and Coco's story," appeared in gold letters on the screen. The cameras caught Mateo standing beside the microphone, his eyes glistening as he looked up at the video. The monkey, Coco, perched on his shoulder, holding his hand tightly, as if remembering everything that was about to be shown. The screen faded into a flashback, the image of a small rural village in the Philippines. Palm trees swayed gently, and children laughed while playing near a river. A younger version of Mateo could be seen, barefoot, running through the muddy paths with his friends. Coco, then just a tiny baby monkey, jumped playfully on his shoulder, stealing a piece of banana from his hand. Laughter filled the air. The audience smiled at the innocence of it all, a simple life, filled with joy and friendship. But the mood changed suddenly. Dark clouds rolled in, thunder cracked, and rain poured down in heavy sheets. The background music shifted from gentle to tense. People in the village began rushing to their homes as the river started to swell. The younger Mateo, frightened, tried to run back toward his house, but the muddy ground made him slip. The floodwater rose quickly, and before he could reach safety, a strong current swept him away. The camera followed his small body tumbling through the brown water, his cries drowned by the sound of the storm. Gasps filled the AGT theater. The camera cut back to Mateo standing silently on stage, his hand clutching the microphone tightly, his lips pressed together to keep his emotions from spilling out. Then the video continued, the scene that would change everything. Coco appeared, clinging to a floating branch, eyes wide with fear. When he spotted Mateo being carried away, the little monkey leaped into the raging water without hesitation. The music swelled as Coco grabbed the boy's soaked shirt, struggling with all his strength to pull him toward a nearby bamboo fence. The screen showed Coco biting onto Mateo's collar, refusing to let go despite the powerful current. Villagers ran through the rain, shouting, and finally pulled the boy and the monkey to safety. The camera lingered on a moment that broke hearts, Coco lying beside the unconscious boy, shivering and drenched, refusing to leave his side. The video faded to black, replaced by real footage of Mateo hugging Coco tightly. His voice came softly over the speakers. That day, Coco didn't just save my life. He gave me a reason to live. When I lost everything, I still had him. He became my family. When the lights came back on, the theater was silent. Some audience members wiped their eyes. Sophia clasped her hands to her chest, whispering, "Oh my God." Simon looked at the boy with deep admiration, his face showing something raw, genuine emotion. In that moment, everyone understood that this was no ordinary audition. It was the story of courage, love, and an unbreakable bond between a boy and his monkey. The stage lights glowed softly in shades of gold and blue, creating a dreamlike atmosphere as the music technician gave Mateo a nod. The audience grew still, sensing that something special was about to unfold. Mateo stood in the center of the AGT stage, his small figure illuminated by a warm spotlight. Coco sat quietly on his shoulder, holding onto his shirt collar with one tiny hand, eyes wide as if he understood exactly what was happening. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The gentle introduction of "You Raise Me Up" began to play, soft piano chords echoing through the massive theater. Mateo took a shaky breath, then began to sing. His voice, though young, carried a surprising strength, smooth and pure like a morning breeze. The first notes filled the air, and instantly, the audience fell silent. His tone trembled slightly at first, but with each word, he grew more confident. The boy closed his eyes, his hand resting on Coco's back as if drawing courage from his little friend. As the music built, Coco started to move too, not randomly, but in perfect rhythm with the song. When Mateo raised his hand on a high note, Coco mimicked the gesture, his tiny fingers stretching toward the sky. The crowd chuckled softly at first, charmed, but soon realized how connected the two were. Every motion, every breath, every glance between them told a story of deep trust and love. Heidi Klum whispered something to Sophia, her hand over her heart. "It's like they share one soul," Sophia murmured, her eyes glistening. Mateo's voice soared higher, reaching the emotional peak of the song. The lights brightened, golden beams pouring down on them like sunlight after rain. Coco gently placed his tiny hands on Mateo's cheek, gazing at him with pure affection. The audience gasped, touched by the innocence of the moment. Then, in a moment that no one expected, Coco began to hum softly, not perfectly, but enough to make the entire theater burst into emotional laughter and applause. The boy smiled mid-song, tears forming in his eyes, but he didn't stop singing. His voice wavered but never broke. He sang as if he was singing not to win, but to thank his best friend, the one who had saved him and stood by him through everything. As the final note echoed, Mateo knelt on one knee, holding Coco close against his chest. The monkey hugged his face tightly, tail wrapped around his arm. For a brief, powerful second, there was no sound, no applause, no cheers, just silence. A silence so deep it carried more meaning than words ever could. Then, the entire audience rose to their feet. The cheers came like a wave, applause echoing through the theater. Sophia clapped with tears in her eyes. Heidi stood, hands raised in amazement. Howie laughed through emotion, shouting, "That was unbelievable." And Simon, usually calm, critical Simon, sat quietly for a moment, his eyes fixed on the boy and the monkey. Then, slowly, he stood and joined the standing ovation. His expression said everything. This wasn't just a performance, it was a miracle in motion. As the final echoes of the song faded into silence, the golden stage lights dimmed slightly, leaving only Mateo and Coco in a soft, glowing spotlight. The audience, moments ago roaring with applause, now sat still, their emotions caught somewhere between awe and tears. The boy stood frozen, his small chest rising and falling with deep breaths, his eyes still glistening. Coco clung to him, pressing its tiny face against his neck, as if sensing the boy's trembling. Simon Cowell leaned forward, elbows resting on the judge's desk, his face uncharacteristically soft. He didn't speak right away, and that silence felt heavier than anything he could have said. The camera zoomed in on him, even the hosts backstage could be seen staring at the monitors, their eyes wide, hands covering their mouths. The moment was raw, unfiltered, a stillness that only came after something truly extraordinary. Mateo lowered his microphone slowly, unsure if he had done well or if he had even managed to sing perfectly. He looked toward the judges, trying to read their faces. Coco made a small chirping sound, wrapping its little arm around his cheek, as if telling him, "You did great." The boy gave a faint smile, his lips trembling, tears threatening to fall. Finally, Simon exhaled softly and leaned closer to his mic. "Mateo," he said in a low, gentle voice that surprised everyone. "I've seen thousands of performances on this stage, but what I just saw wasn't just a performance." He paused, searching for words, his eyes locked on the boy. It was love. It was trust. It was the most honest thing I've seen in a long, long time. The crowd broke into soft applause, some even cheering, yes, through their tears. Simon continued, his tone still warm, "You didn't come here to impress us with big tricks or perfect vocals. You came here to show us something pure, something the world doesn't see enough of anymore." Mateo wiped his eyes, his voice shaking as he replied, "Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make people smile. Coco, he makes me strong." Coco looked at Simon then, almost as if it understood the conversation. It tilted its head, blinked twice, and then raised its tiny paw toward him. The audience melted instantly, laughter mixed with sniffles filling the theater. Simon smiled, truly smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "Well, Coco," he said softly, "you've done something incredible today." He turned to the other judges. "I don't know about you, but this got me right here." He tapped his chest over his heart. Heidi nodded, visibly emotional. "It's the kind of moment that reminds us why we love this show," she said. Sophia added, "It was beautiful. The connection, the courage, everything." Simon looked back at Mateo, his expression turning serious again. "You know, I don't usually get speechless," he said, his voice slightly cracking. "But right now, I am. That wasn't just talent, Mateo. That was soul." The crowd erupted into applause again, chanting the boy's name, Mateo. Mateo. The little boy couldn't hold his tears any longer. He covered his face with one hand, Coco gently patting his cheek as if comforting him. It was no longer just an audition, it was a story of friendship, bravery, and a bond that went far beyond words. And as Simon leaned back in his chair, his fingers moved toward the golden buzzer in front of him, the audience sensed what was coming. The air in the theater shifted, electric, emotional, expectant. Something unforgettable was about to happen. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Simon's hand hovered over the golden buzzer, his eyes never leaving the boy standing on the stage. Mateo stood frozen, Coco still perched on his shoulder, tiny hands clutching his shirt as if holding on for dear life. The crowd, sensing what was coming, began to murmur with anticipation, a rising wave of hope, emotion, and disbelief. Simon glanced briefly at the other judges, then back at Mateo. His face softened completely, his usual guarded expression replaced by something honest and deeply moved. He spoke slowly, his voice filled with warmth. "Mateo," he said, "you reminded all of us why this stage exists. You showed what love and loyalty truly mean. And for that," he looked down at the golden button in front of him, smiled faintly, then slammed his hand onto it. The buzzer lit up in a blinding flash of gold. The familiar sound filled the entire theater, that powerful, echoing thud, followed by a storm of golden confetti bursting from the ceiling. The audience exploded in cheers, screaming, clapping, crying. Mateo gasped, covering his mouth in shock, tears instantly flooding his eyes. Coco jumped excitedly on his shoulder, squealing and spinning in circles, tiny hands reaching toward the raining gold. Simon stood up, clapping slowly at first, then grinning. "You earned this," he said through the noise. "Both of you." Sophia and Heidi were already on their feet, their faces wet with tears. Howie laughed through the emotion, shouting over the roar of the crowd, "That's the most beautiful golden buzzer I've ever seen." Mateo looked up at the falling confetti, completely overwhelmed. The lights made everything shimmer like magic, every golden piece reflecting his tears and Coco's playful movements. He fell to his knees, hugging the little monkey tightly to his chest. Coco wrapped its arms around his neck and pressed its face against his cheek. The boy whispered something only the cameras barely caught, "We did it, Coco. We really did it." Backstage, Terry Crews was cheering, wiping his eyes, shouting, "That's what AGT is all about." The camera panned to the audience. Families, children, even the toughest faces in the crowd were crying, smiling, standing together. Simon walked up onto the stage, which was rare. The confetti still fell like a golden rain around him. He approached Mateo slowly, then knelt beside him. "You're incredible," Simon said softly. "And that little friend of yours, he's a hero." He gently patted Coco's head, and the monkey looked at him, blinking curiously, before grabbing his finger and refusing to let go. The audience burst out laughing through their tears. The music swelled again, a triumphant, emotional score, as the golden light bathed the stage. Mateo and Coco stood hand in paw, facing the roaring audience. The camera captured the perfect shot, gold confetti raining down, Simon smiling beside them, and a boy and his monkey standing in the center of it all, united by love, courage, and gratitude. It was more than a win. It was a moment that would live forever, the story of a Filipino boy and his rescue monkey who came to America's Got Talent not just to perform, but to remind the world of the kind of love that can save lives, move hearts, and inspire millions.